It's hard for many people to figure out how to speak to a therapist, how to be direct, how to be honest, and how not to hide those little things that we like to hide from each other that kind of coagulate over deeper problems over time. Because, like, we all hide behind those little niceties, right? In conversation and in public. Like, we ask how someone is, but we don't actually want to hear, like, if they're doing really bad, we want to hear about, oh, how their mom's been sick forever or their brother is getting into trouble again, something like that. We don't really want the whole answer back. So we kind of get stuck in these situations where we're doing all these little lies to each other, and then that becomes people's expectations of therapy sometimes, where it's like you try to stretch the truth to make everything seem better than it is, or to seem like your situation is better, seem like your mind is better, and seem like your emotions are better than they are. Because we're so used to doing those little things. We're so used to not talking about. We're so used to not, at least leading into some of a problem that we have or something that is troubling us. Those little lead-ins are some of the hardest parts of therapy, where it's just like because the therapist a lot of the time will just start small and just ask you to tell them more about this or that. And it's remarkable. I've noticed myself in therapy, and I've noticed, like, even group sessions or like when other people talk about their therapy sessions, how they, once the dam is open, it's like all this stuff can just come flooding out. Once you make those little holes where it's like, the little bit of honesty sheds some light into that darkness, somebody's darkness, and then it's like the whole space is illuminated. Everything just comes pouring out, pouring out. But the hardest part is getting over that little hump of trying to make like everything is okay, or like you're feeling okay when you're actually not. That's the hardest part of therapy. If you're trying, not the hardest part, but that's one of the initial hardest parts. If you're seeking therapy, if you're thinking about therapy, I highly recommend it. You're not always going to find a therapist. Psychological therapist is mainly what I'm talking about right now. You're not always going to find a therapist that really is really a good fit for you. Some therapists might be very, like one that I tried very recently, very direct, not beating around the bush, not honeycoating anything, telling you like it is to your face. That might be good for some people. It's fine for me. I mean, but I've had a lot of different kinds of therapists, so I know it works for me. But for other people, that might be a little bit abrasive. Like, ooh, like I don't want you to take off the kid gloves yet. I want to kind of coast around. I want you to take me easily into the reality that I can't see. Whereas other people might, um, other people might want that directness, or maybe you might want a therapist that knows a lot about trauma or addiction or parental issues, abandonment issues, some kind of PTSD, CPTSD, or some kind of trauma that you're not even aware of, and they might see signs of that, signs of abuse, things like that. Um, there's different specialties, and a lot of the time when you're looking online, the therapists, when they put their listings or whatever, a lot of therapists have websites, or they'll be listed on Google, and then they'll have, like, their office and things like that. But they'll say those their specialties. And luckily, we live in a time where you can read therapist reviews. It's really easy to find all this stuff online. And it's really important to look through a number of therapists when you're looking for a therapist, online, to figure out which one sounds the best for you. Some people might not be comfortable with a male. Some people might not be comfortable with a female. Somebody might want a therapist that is knows a lot about gender and has a lot of experience with people having trouble transitioning from one gender to another, or who are non-binary, things like that. There's a whole lot of different kinds of therapists out there. There's still some things in therapy that, psychoanalysis and psychology in general is an evolving practice. It is not stationary. So, and it's still relatively new, of 70, 80 years now. And we're still getting out some kinks, but it's so much better than it used to be. And there's much all the problems that I mentioned, as far as like the trauma or any kind of abuse, or trying to get your memories out there, trying to get your words out, so that maybe you can draw your own conclusions. And a lot of these things have been very well mapped out, dealing with emotions in a number of different ways, dealing with the past in a number of different ways. A lot of this stuff has been mapped out very well. It's just finding the right therapist that fits for you. It's going to be kind of expensive still. So, average therapy session, probably an hour long, could run you between 120, 140, maybe 100 if you're lucky. You might be able to, of course, get insurance to cover a lot of that, and you might just have a copay, or you might have to pay out of pocket. That might be what you're paying out of pocket. It's way more expensive than it used to be. When I first started going to therapists, and I just started going again because I got some unresolved stuff. But when I first started going years ago, this was, I think, early 20s. I'm 31 now. It was like 60 or 70. So it's definitely increased, like doubled basically. But inflation, things like that. But it's crazy because when I started going to therapy again, I'm like, oh my God, this used to be so much cheaper. I guess that's a way to feel old. I don't know. Should I start feeling old at 31? I kind of do. Always kind of have like an old soul though. At any rate, don't be afraid of seeking out a therapist if you need therapy, or if you're curious about it. Honestly, you can research a lot of it on YouTube, like honestly, you should just be honest with the therapist, because you're spending your money, you're spending your time, and this is not somebody that you have to impress. This is somebody that's trying to help you through your problems. And a lot of people don't really know how valuable that is, because a lot of the time we think that, we know our life. We know what we've been through. We know the solutions that work for us. But a lot of the time, the solutions that work for us don't really work for us. And then it becomes a problem for us over time. And sometimes a fresh perspective is really what you need. Because even if the therapist is not, it's so strange, because even if the therapist is not like directly using their their skills that they learned in school, just a fresh perspective with somebody who can give you that fresh perspective, like a therapist, like a classified therapist or a certified therapist, is really good and really refreshing, and really you can see an issue, or you can see a problem more three-dimensionally if you have multiple perspectives and multiple lines of sight on a singular problem or a singular obstacle in your way. Or maybe you don't know there's something that's there and you're just sad all the time and you're always down, and then that's when you might need to work on what's your self-talk like. Therapists might work you through that. What do you think about? But at any rate, there's a whole lot of little things that are also good, and sometimes you need a fresh perspective. Like somebody like me, I think that I know way more than well, I still kind of think that this is my problem. I think that I know more than, I don't think the therapist can help me, because I think I know more than them. And I realized recently that that's not true. And that seems like an obvious thing to realize, but recently I realized that's not true. And I need to start going again. And that, once I started going again, once I kind of got over the hump of starting to go again, starting to open up again, I realized that that a fresh perspective, like I mentioned, but also just some really good things that you wouldn't expect a therapist to know, especially one that's why I usually want to go for one that has experience in the areas that you feel like you need help in. And if it's mood, if you're not really sure what is wrong with you or what's troubling you, I mean, just take a shot with a therapist, general psychiatric therapist, something like that. Just don't be afraid to go to therapy if you need it, and so the price tag might sound high, especially nowadays, but sometimes it's worth it. Especially if it's just a copay, then it's not like 140 or something like that. But there's little obstacles within that can be figured out with conversing with somebody who knows what they're talking about. And it, medication is a whole nother thing, and that's something that you're gonna make a decision on by yourself. But I wouldn't go the medication route first. I would see if you can clear these obstacles, talking through them, and getting a therapist to help you work through these problems, so that you can live a happier life, and that you can move forward in your life in whatever you want to achieve in a more effective way, with a clearer emotional slate. So that's why, honestly, that I'd recommend therapy to anybody who feels like they need it, or are curious about it, or is something that's troubling you. Seek out a therapist. Do not be afraid of therapy. Once again, do not be afraid of therapy. Thank you very much for watching. If you like this video at all, hit that thumbs up down there. It really helps out the channel. Feel free to leave a comment in the comment section below. I try to respond to all comments as long as they are polite. And feel free to become a patron on Patreon at patreon.com/darkrealist. Capital D, capital R. Once again, patreon.com/darkrealist. Capital D, capital R. For $1 a month, you can support my work, or you can give me more if you want, and I give specific ritual notes that I don't give anywhere else on Patreon, and you get my YouTube videos and my podcasts and stuff that I write all in one place. At any rate, don't be afraid of therapy. I hope that you find yourself more well in the future, or maybe you're doing great and you just found this interesting. But if you are seeking therapy, don't be afraid. Thank you very much, and all of you have a wonderful day.